Welcome back to another Sleight of Mind session. Today we're going to be following on from something that came up in conversation the other day I actually had with a few friends. We were talking about this idea, and I think this is pretty familiar to most people now, that it's nowadays it's more who you know rather than what you know. So today we're going to be discussing the importance of networking, especially in today's times, and maybe some tips and tricks on how, if maybe you're not the best at networking, how you can become a little bit better. So I think one of the things that have changed how we network a lot, I think we can all probably agree on, is social media.
Yeah.
I want to kick off the chat though by getting your guys' view on somebody that doesn't understand or doesn't think networking is that important these days. Like, have you guys got any examples or experiences yourself of where networking has been really beneficial for you and why you think everybody should be getting involved in and actively networking with people?
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I've always been quite shy. I'm still quite shy now when it comes to people, and unless I know you. So when I was younger, I kind of forced myself to go to network meetings, and I'd drag my friends along, or I'd try and drag them along. If they didn't come, I'd go anyway. And I just felt like after doing that, I met so many different people and different points of view that it heightened my point of view even further. So it was networking seminars. So it would be like, obviously you go there, you network with people. The seminar was about coaching, or let's say about business, but you're still networking with different people and seeing so many different points of view in a short period of time sort of gives you that brainstorm, and it lets you form your own opinion. So yeah, for me, networking was really great. I mean, I still want to do it now. I'm still quite shy at doing it now. It's just basically 90% of the work is turning up, or even 95% of the work is turning up. So
Yeah.
yeah, networking in my own experience when I was younger, yeah, it's definitely great, and it's still great now.
Would you guys say that you do more networking now online or in person or mix of both?
See, I think for me, networking is still very traditional. So it's still very much the people I meet when I am physically there.
Mm.
I don't really come across people online and start talking to them online and build a network that way. It's very much, and again, I think maybe I might be fortunate in this situation where I'm actually surrounded by loads of people, or I end up in places where there are a new group of people and it's a new environment to learn. So again, I think also being surrounded by different people every day helps you build those networking skills as well. Because generally, if you're in that same routine, seeing the same people every day, you kind of become comfortable. And when you are put into a situation where you are surrounded by new people, you don't generally sometimes want to reach out. You sort of close off into your shell. So again, it's very much dependent on the environments you've been in. For me, it's always been with a lot of people in very different situations and always been sort of physical. I don't think I've actually networked online or built like made a network of people, just people I've met online. I've never really interacted with them face to face.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a good point because mine's like the opposite now. I'm very online. I'm always online. A lot of my stuff is online, so I do have a network online. I've met them through Facebook groups and sort of LinkedIn, and just, oh, I know this person who does this. You can speak to them, and I've built up a very strong network online. Thinking about it, and I haven't had many networking in person networking events in a long time. So I probably don't have them skills like J Power was saying. So yeah, it's like two different sides of the coin there, because you can build one online definitely now more so than you could before, especially sort of in my industry, the online industry. There's a lot of what they call digital nomads, where they don't live in the same area. They sort of live in like Thailand and Vietnamese, Central America, stuff like that. So networking is still possible, but yeah, it's online. But I do appreciate that face-to-face connection as well. It's a lot deeper
Mm.
sort of networking connection rather than just being online and
I
typing.
don't, I don't think we'll ever replace face-to-face connections. This has been the traditional way since the dawn of time. But I think networking online, whether that's professionally through like things like LinkedIn, which is kind of the professional way to go mostly. But then you've also got like Facebook, Twitter, things like this, where you can meet a bunch of like-minded people and talk about the same interests that you guys have. it's so the online sector has opened up a lot of doors for people that maybe were not so comfortable doing things in person, and can actually give them a chance to express their personality without having the insecurities, or maybe, like we said, like maybe lack of experience of like in-person social skills. So I think online has been quite important, and that's, I think, again, both for friendships and also the professional world.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you guys, so maybe aimed more at J-Power, as I think he has more in-person networking skills. What would you say, like, would you have like a top tip or top 3 tips that you would suggest to people in order to be able to become more friendly, be able to get along with people more, how to just network better, how to have a better reach of people at your circle?
Yeah. So weirdly, sort of entering professional world, we were given sort of tips of how to network, and what I quickly realized was all of those things that were taught to me was things I used to do naturally anyway. And it's just forms part of my characteristic, how I am as a person. But generally, when you're in an environment where you're surrounded by people who are completely new, if you're the first person to make the effort to make that first point of contact with the person in the room, you're already seen as being the more open person, the one that's easy to approach, which makes you more approachable to the other people within the room straight away. All it takes is for you to introduce yourself to that one person first, or be more upfront, like go ahead and make those introductions rather than cowering away and stuff like that. Another part of it is a lot about body language as well. So like when you do start talking to someone, how are you receptive to them? What does your body language say to them about like how you are engrossed in the conversation, or are you interested? Obviously, and we've spoken about this before, people love to talk about themselves. So the longer you can get the other person to talk about themselves and about their interest and dig in deeper and try and find connection points, the more the other person will feel like they have a connection with you and that they've had a good conversation with you. So that's probably the number one tip, is always steer a conversation to find maybe something you've got an interest in with that is likewise with the person you're speaking to, but do it in a way and ask the questions that would elongate the conversation. So try and stay away from the questions that are yes and no answers, like things that people have to elaborate on, and that way you can get them more engrossed into what they're talking about.
Trying to come up with those questions is quite difficult off the top of your head. I get you have that naturally, but for someone that doesn't, they come to me like, okay, this one.
So I think that was, so I remember when we were doing this, when we were first learning, and a lot of the time they were forcing us to talk about specific subjects. And what you realized you were doing was, because you were not interested in the subject, you were trying to think of the next question, which meant you weren't actually listening to the person.
Yeah.
If you spent time just to listen to them and let it flow naturally. So if you hit a point that you're talking about and you realize like you have no more questions about it, flip it to something else. Flip it to something that interests you. And that way, if they're receptive to it, no, then try another topic. And it's kind of trial and error, really. If it gets too hard, there's no harm in being like, oh, look, sorry, I need to grab a drink.
It sounds to me like it's like trying to chat up a girl, really. You want to keep going, then you flip it.
Sorry, my mom's calling me.
So I was kind of similar, right? I was never quite confident, especially when I was younger. One of the big ones for me is body language and tonality of your voice as well, I think is a big one. For me, I'm a big believer in, so I've studied a little bit of psychology. I'm a big fan of NLP, and it goes back to the age-old saying, it's like, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. Like, you can come across to somebody like you're trying to be full of banter, but if you say it in the wrong way, it can be taken as offensive. And I think one of the big parts for me about networking is knowing who you are as a person and trying to be genuine as to who you are and not trying to fake it and try and be someone else. Because anybody else that's good at reading other people can see through those things straight away, and you instantly lose points by doing that. One of my other big tips is understanding that networking happens long before you start a conversation. So for me, if you're walking into a room full of people, networking starts the moment you walk into the room. And it's how you're walking into the room, how you're presenting yourself, both when you're mixing with other people. And yeah, it goes back to kind of body language and how you're speaking to them. And I think that you can become a lot more of an approachable person by how you're having a conversation with one person to other people. Because when you kind of go around, so say for example, you're in a crowded room and everyone's in pairs talking to each other. If you scan the room, out of the pair of people, you can kind of identify who's the leader of that conversation. And by certain traits that they show, they become the likely more interesting person to speak to. And I think you're naturally inclined to want to speak to somebody interesting. One tip that I still use till this day, and I think it's a tough one to get right, it's a trick that they call mirroring. And it's a form of building rapport with people, and it's where you go to mirror either their tone of voice, the pitch of their voice, their body language, but you have to kind of do it in a non-creepy way. So if somebody's sitting across from you like this, you don't just want to stare back at them and make it creepy. And it's kind of a hard thing to get right, but you have to do it so subtly. And the kind of the psychology behind it is that people like to get along with people that they feel are the same. And if your body language, your rate of breathing, your tone of voice, the pitch that you're speaking is in sync with the person that you're speaking to, there's a higher chance that you're going to be getting along with them. And I think the experiments that have been done, they look at people that get along with each other, whether they're in relationships, whether they're the best of friends, and they analyze their body language, and they find that people that actually get along naturally sit the same way, or talk at the same level, or express the same tone or pitch of voice or anything when they're having a conversation with each other. So if you actually go to, maybe fake is the wrong word to use, but if you exaggerate these points to be more in sync with the other person, I tend to find that you can get along with people a lot better. A good resource for things like this is I used to love watching Darren Brown. I still do. I'm a massive fan of a lot of his work. And again, it kind of goes back to psychology and things like this, but a lot of the techniques he has to employ, especially for things like instant hypnosis and things like this, you have to have a certain level of understanding and rapport with the person. And there's a few, I guess, tricks or acts that he does where he has to develop rapport very quickly. I'll try and dig them out, and I'll make sure I try and leave a link to these just to point out the things that he does. But it's a very obvious form of mirroring, and he does it very blatantly, but you kind of only know it, you'll only really notice it once somebody's pointed it out. But yeah, Darren Brown's is a master at kind of body language and building rapport with people. So I think he's a great resource to kind of look into and read about in terms of psychology and just get along and networking with people.
I guess a tip on my side, I mean, I don't network too much. Again, most of it's online, but when I used to go out to seminars, would just be going to those meetups. Like, there's a site called meetup.com, and if you want to practice to get better how to networking, just go and turn up. Like, if it's 8 people, if it's 2 people, if it's 20, 50 people, it doesn't matter. Just go up to those events. They're fairly cheap or even free sometimes, and just start networking with people. You're only going to get better by doing that same thing.
Yep.
I'm a martial artist at heart. You can only get a better punch by throwing more punches. So same thing. You're not going to get better at networking by doing it. So a good way of sort of practicing your craft would be to go to meetup.com and find some meetups that you're interested in going in, because you won't know when you go there. It's going to be sort of topic based depending on what you want to meet up for. And there's all different types of stuff. So don't feel like you won't find something that you're not interested in. So that would be my one tip, is just go to these events.
Actually, it strings a good question for me, because obviously I rely on a lot of, and what Sandy's been talking about as well, is we're looking at body language, so doing the mirroring, and especially like the tone of voice and all this stuff. But all of that gets stripped away completely when you're online. And this is probably a question for you, Jamie, and something I would like to know, because I've never really done this, is how do you build that rapport with someone online when everything is stripped away and all you got is really raw text? Like, how do you show a personality? How do you show an interest? How do you drum up a conversation?
So my point of view on that is even when in person, I'm a very direct person. So if I'm networking, I take away all the cloud. I take away all the fluff. So, like the small talk, I'm not a small talker. Unless you're talking straight to me, like straight business, I don't really conversate with people. I can't sit here and say, oh yeah, let's have a talk about this, talk about that. Even though we came to talk about this one thing, that's what I'm coming to talk about. So online, a lot of people are like that. So when it's text to text, they don't care about how your day was or your emotions or your body language. This is the question, give me the answer. This is the answer, give me the next question. That's sort of how it works from my opinion. And that's how I am as a person anyway. So you got to learn how to mold between the two. But online now, there's obviously Skype, which is what we're using right now, which you can achieve those things as well. It's just starting off that conversation, which you're saying is difficult because you don't know the person, you don't see the person. But that's when that straight shooting comes into account. And also how your reputation is online as well, because everyone has a rep online. So if you're trying to obviously network online, but you don't have a Facebook, you don't have a Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, people, or even a Google account or whatever, people are most likely not going to want to network with you because they don't know who you are. I mean, if you're on meetup.com, you have to have a profile. You know, all of these things that have profiles, you want to put some effort into your profile. That's like them pre-screening you, you know, like sort of in person, you can sort of see in the room who you might be attracted to talk to, right? Like who you want to see, oh, that person seems like an interesting person. You got to make a profile, display that for you. So make sure if you are doing it online that you are sort of in the right circles in terms of your profile being in place. And also word of mouth, you know, I mean, if you're in an industry like, say, for example, I'm in internet marketing, once I've worked with someone and you have that rapport, they leave a good taste with you and you leave a good taste with them, they're most likely going to refer you, and that's how you start to build your network and start becoming part of these private groups that are available and so on and so forth, because they've brought you in on recommendation or something like that. So that's the only way I sort of would have sum it up to be online.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Achieve the same goal.
It's interesting, man, because I mean, I think I much prefer probably networking in person as well, whether that's professionally or socially. But I've had a big, I wouldn't say it's a thing against online. I've strayed away from social media from quite a young age, I guess. I was into it when I kind of was going through school. I started growing out of it pretty quickly through university, and I'm pretty much off most platforms now, at least on the social side of things. And whilst I think that had some advantages for me, I think not networking online as well has some massive disadvantages as well. The fact that I don't have that instant reach of maybe hundreds of friends out there to, you know, just even if I'm putting something on Facebook or I need help with something or trying to find someone like-minded, not having all those profiles, like you said, set up and having the time and effort put in, it kind of makes you that kind of mystery person in the background that nobody really knows how to connect with. There's no word of mouth connection because I'm kind of off the scene. And I've kind of started to feel that more and probably in the last 6 to 12 months that not being on social media and networking online has as many disadvantages as it does advantages.
Yeah.
Especially
with the way the world is moving, right? Everyone's online right now. So no matter what industry you're in, people are like, well, I don't have to get up and go to this networking meeting. I can just be online and have a Skype session or talk to people in this Facebook group or LinkedIn group or whatever. So like, let's say for you example, Sanj, with trading, I mean, obviously trading is done online anyway. So why would they get out from their computer to go out to an event and socialize with other traders? Some people will, but maybe some of the best traders will never ever leave their house. You know what I mean? And the same for my industry, online marketers, like online website owners, they might not ever leave their house. They're just like, why? I'm sitting on the beach on my laptop. Why am I going to fly to wherever? Like, yes, some people do want to do that, but some people don't. So there's been a whole world opened up, a whole kind of like networking previously was only done sort of in person. And now there's a whole online networking sort of community as well. So mixture between the two is very healthy.
One of the things within when you're talking to someone face to face, you kind of get a reaction straight away if they're interested or not. How does that kind of play out when you're online? Is it, and again, I'm more focusing on just like in terms of just text rather than having a like a Skype or face-to-face session. How do you pick up on those things where it's like, wait, this conversation isn't going where I kind of want it to go, or they're clearly not interested? Because like some people might do different techniques where they just take forever to respond. Someone just be straight up and just not respond at all. But it feels like that those type of return responses are more elongated in that respect, whereas when you're face to face, you get it straight away. So like, how do you deal and cope with that? Like,
Yeah, I think that's a massive disadvantage of online networking, because the way someone reads a text or a message compared to someone else is completely different,
Yeah.
depending on what they're saying too. Like to be honest, even when I text some of my friends or even my partner, the way that she may read the message is not what I actually said. So in text version, there's completely different ways of understanding or interpreting what the other person is saying. You don't know whether they're joking or not, because you can't see their face. You don't know. You can't see their body language, all this stuff. So yes, I think that's a massive disadvantage. But like I was saying earlier, I think the key thing about that is that they are doing, like, people online are being very direct. So if you're waiting for a text, yeah, you can't really get around that. If you're waiting for a message, you can't really get around that. But you're kind of straight to the point. So for example, in my case, I would message the person, wait a couple of days, message them again to say like, are you getting back to me, whatever. And then that's it. The conversation's done. There was no relationship built. If they're on holiday, if they didn't get time to get back to me, that's fair enough. But I'm not gonna waste my time sitting around keep chasing them. So that's that conversation sort of done. If they come back to me and say, hey, sorry, I was away, then that relationship can start to build again, right? But I think most people online are just straight shooters. They're like, this is what I want. Are you going to give it to me, yes or no? And the other people on the other end are going to not reply, which means no, or they're going to say no, or they're going to say yes and give it to you, So it's kind of a little bit more cutthroat when it comes to being online. But I definitely think it's a disadvantage in terms of instant reply. So yeah.
I feel like they're two, like, both traditional in-person networking and online networking. They're two, like, completely different fields, and both you kind of need, I guess, different skill sets in order to be experts at networking in both. And there are maybe some small crossover points which you can apply to both. But like, I even think of things like dating. Like, for example, like how much the online game has changed dating entirely.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't have exact stats on this, but I'm definitely going to be looking it up after this because I'm curious now. But how much dating actually occurs or starts online now as opposed to in person? I'd be swayed to say I reckon probably 75-80% is probably also online rather than in person now. And I can see why people would struggle finding dates online, because that communication is not the same as in person. You could be talking to the perfect person, but just because you can't get your message across the same way, you lose that link.
Yeah, for sure. And remember, everyone online's building a picture in their head of what that person is. Well, right. Yeah. So the picture that they're building might not actually be the same, regardless of image. Not even image, like building the picture of their personality. You're doing as well. Like one person that I might reach out to, and they answer me straight away with a really helpful answer. I'm like, oh, that dude's really nice dude. But maybe in real life, he's not. He's just like cutthroat. He's like, yeah, just get out of my way. Here's the answer. You know what I mean? You don't really know. So.
And in the same way, somebody else could see that quick response and be like, man, this guy is eager.
Yeah.
You can see it exactly the opposite way. It all just depends, I guess.
So another question off of that then. Do you think that maybe online networking and social media has hampered sort of our core social skills?
I would say, yeah, 100%. You need to be in the middle, like the online networking should lead you to in-person networking or face-to-face networking. I kind of consider Skype as face-to-face. I mean, I know you're not in person, but you're still face-to-face, but you need a bit of both. But yeah, a lot of people hide behind it completely now. So I feel so, definitely, 100%. Even like down to the kids that we see nowadays. They can't even speak to other kids that they don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, I mean, I could probably try and put arguments in for both, because I think Jamie, you mentioned it earlier, like the way the world is going is that we're moving into this digital era, and I think as time progresses on, it's going to be more and more so that you're going to be meeting people online. So I think it's just as important to have in-person skills as well as online skills. And I get that obviously there are disadvantages and stuff, but I think it's the way that networking and just communication as a whole is adapting. And it's one of these things, like, if you're not trying to get better with the times, you're going to fall behind. if you can only do traditional networking, that might not serve you well in the next 5 or 10 years when a lot of these things get phased out. You know, I know, for example, I think it's Cisco. They've got a like piece of software called Telepresence, where you can literally have like holograms around a table. And you know, you think of that sort of stuff, like that, like when you're getting it to that sort of level, when the picture of somebody being next to you is that clear, it's gonna phase out in person.
Star Wars, isn't it?
Like businesses are not going to need to fly around the world to meet together in one place. They could just do it from the comfort, you know, of their own, you know, kind of study or office space in their own location. So it's, in a way, it's kind of phasing out a lot of some of the traditional aspects of networking, but I still don't see it ever going anywhere entirely. I still think you need to have a mix of both.
Yeah, I think bottom line is you have to find a way to portray your in-person skills online. That's the bottom line of it. You need to translate that. If you're unable to do that, like you might be great at networking in person, but then online you suck, you know, and vice versa. You need to translate that. The way you appear online might be really good, but then in person you don't speak to people that you don't know. You need to be both sides of the coin. So that is the real key, in my opinion.
That's a lot of the reason these like emojis and bitmojis were kind of brought about, to help express yourself more, except for just kind of plain text and words.
Yeah.
You know, helping to try and change the game a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So, and with global cultures and stuff like that, that's another thing hurdle that you got across, because the UK banner is something that not many people around the world understand. So it's quite difficult to portray that online. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's difficult to portray that in person, let alone online. You know, so yeah, that's a struggle too.
Okay, guys, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you hit like. We'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on networking, communication, where you think the times are going, and your own experiences on it. One good book that we'd all like to throw out there is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think it's by Dale Carnegie. I'm throwing it off the top of my head, but we'll leave a link to it below. Very good book in terms of just networking and getting along with people. But I hope you got some food for thought from this video. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.